Today we will discuss the second chapter in human physiology, that is breathing and exchange of gases. So what is this breathing? It is nothing but overall respiration. The entire process is known as respiration. So now regarding to the breathing, what is breathing? It is nothing but inhalation of oxygen as well as the removal of carbon dioxide. Okay, so there is a intake of oxygen as well as a removal or exhale of carbon dioxide from the body, and that refers to the breathing, and the process is also known as respiration. Okay, so where the oxygen which will combine with the blood. Okay, so that will be combined with the blood in the lungs and it will be utilized. So there is a cellular uptake of oxygen and the carbon dioxide which are produced in the body tissues, and that will be eliminated. So that is nothing but breathing as well as, or it is also known as a respiration. So next, moving on to the respiratory organs. So different organisms will have different respiratory organs. So the members of sponges, members of coelenterata, as well as the members of flatworms. So especially in these organisms where the respiration mainly takes place through a simple diffusion through the body surface by a simple diffusion where there will be a process of respiration. So that is mainly by a simple diffusion. Especially this is seen in sponges, coelenterata as well as the members of flatworms. And the organisms such as earthworms. So the organisms such as earthworms, they are mainly having cuticle. So their skin, their moist skin consisting of a cuticle. We can also tell that in the earthworm where the mode of respiration or the mode of breathing especially takes place by the moist skin. That is why these organisms are mainly seen in the moist regions. These organisms are mainly seen in the moist regions where the respiration takes place through the skin, moist skin or the cuticle. So for example in the earthworm. And the members of insects, few arthropoda members, the insects, they mainly having a tube-like structure, and that is known to be the tracheal tube. Okay, so they are mainly having a tracheal tube for the process of respiration. So especially a tracheal tube. And some of the other members of arthropoda, they also have book lungs. Okay, it is also a structure which is arranged like in a series, book lungs, as well as there is a presence of book gills. The members of arthropoda are also having book gills for the process of respiration. When we talk about the fishes, especially the fishes and members of amphibia as well as all these organisms, they mainly have gills. Okay, respiration takes place through the gills, especially the members of fishes, where there is a gills will help in the process of respiration. Okay, so next, the higher organisms, the birds. Okay, so the birds or the reptilian members as well as the mammals, especially they have a structure called lungs for the process of respiration. In case of human beings, we have lungs for the process of respiration. When we talk about the frog is having a different mode of respiration. Maybe through the moist skin, maybe through the gills, maybe through the buccal cavity, or as well as through the lungs. There is a process of respiration takes place, especially in case of frog. So these are the different respiratory organs which are seen in different organisms. So where the respiration may takes place through the body surface, that is by a simple diffusion, or through the moist skin, especially through a cuticle, or through our tracheal tubes, by means of book lungs, by means of book gills, even by means of gills as well as the lungs. Okay, so the lungs are considered to be the one of the complex structure compared to all other respiratory organs. Okay, so this is regarding to the respiratory organs which are mainly found in the organisms. Now we are studying human physiology. Of course, we should look into the human respiratory system. So in case of human respiratory system, we have a pair of lungs. So there is a presence of a pair of lungs which is specially meant for the respiration. So which is mainly found in the thoracic cavity. Lungs are found in the thoracic cavity. Okay, so there is a pair of lungs. So these lungs are covered by a membranous, double membranous layer called pleural membrane. Okay, so double membranous layer called pleural membrane consisting of a fluid known as a pleural fluid which will mainly reduce the friction. It is a protective layer. Okay, so the lungs which is mainly covered by a membrane called pleural membrane consisting of a fluid called pleural fluid which mainly reduces friction. That mainly reduces friction and that is acting as a one of the protective membrane. Okay, so that is regarding to the lung. So now when we look into the human respiratory system, so that starts from the nasal opening. So there is a presence of pair of nostrils. So that starts with the pair of nostrils. The air enters through the nostrils into the nasopharynx region. So we have a nasopharynx region. As you all know that the pharynx is a common passage for the food as well as for the air. Okay, pharynx is a common passage for food and air. So here what happens is the air enters to the nostrils, it enters to the nasopharynx. So the pharynx is divided into three parts: oropharynx, nasopharynx, laryngopharynx. Okay, oropharynx is in connection with the esophagus, nasopharynx is in connection with the nostrils and the laryngopharynx is in connection with the larynx. So those are the three parts in the pharynx. So especially the nostril and then the nasopharynx and then we have a epiglottis. Okay, epiglottis is a cartilaginous flap which will be covering glottis. Epiglottis is a cartilaginous flap and that will be covering glottis, where regarding to the glottis, where the glottis is the opening of larynx. Okay, glottis is considered to be the opening of larynx. Okay, so here epiglottis, which is a cartilaginous flap which mainly avoids entry of food into the trachea. Okay, food will never enter into lungs. Food will never enter into lungs. So that is mainly because of presence of a epiglottis which will close the openings whenever we are consuming food. Okay. So then comes to the sound box, larynx. It is also cartilaginous structure made up of around 9 cartilage. So that is nothing but sound box, where it is a larynx where the sound production is mainly due to this particular larynx. Now extending from the larynx there is the long tube-like structure and that is known to be the trachea, which is mainly consisting of a ring-like structure. There is a presence of C-shaped cartilages. So it is mainly made up of a hyaline cartilage. So there is a presence of a ring-like structure, especially which is seen in the trachea. That is why though there is no air in the trachea, it will never collapse, mainly due to the presence of these particular cartilages which are mainly made up of cartilage. Okay. So here the trachea, as I told, it is made up of C-shaped. It is also known as an incomplete cartilage, C-shaped cartilage, which will be divided into left and right bronchus. Okay, that will be divided into left as well as the right bronchus at the 5th thoracic vertebrae. At the 5th thoracic vertebrae. So what is this fifth thoracic vertebrae. So we have around 26 bones in our vertebral column. Okay, so there are about 26 bones in the vertebral column. So vertebral column consisting of first foremost thoracic vertebrae. The vertebrae which are found in the neck region are known to be the cervical vertebrae. Neck region are known to be the cervical vertebrae. There are about 7 cervical vertebrae, and the chest region, it is known to be the thoracic vertebrae. There are about 12 thoracic vertebrae, and the waist region is the lumbar vertebrae. There are about 5 lumbar vertebrae, and there is 1 sacrum and 1 coccygeal bone or coccyx. Okay, so in the chest region there are about 12 thoracic vertebrae. So at the 5th thoracic vertebrae region, at around the 5th thoracic vertebrae region, so this trachea will be divided into left as well as right bronchus. Okay, so next, this bronchus is further divided to form bronchioles. Okay, bronchus is further divided to from primary bronchiole, secondary bronchiole, tertiary bronchiole, and the narrowest is the terminal bronchiole. Okay, so these bronchioles are further divided to form primary bronchiole, secondary bronchiole, tertiary bronchiole, terminal bronchiole, as well as the narrowest one is the respiratory bronchiole. Okay, and that led to form a small sac-like structure. There is a small blind sac-like structure, and that is known to be the alveoli. It is one of the very important structure in the process of respiration. Okay, at 5th thoracic vertebrae, trachea is divided into left and right bronchus, where these bronchus are further divided and further branched to form primary, secondary, tertiary bronchioles, again terminal as well as respiratory bronchiole, and that extend to form a small bag-like structure, and that is known to be the alveoli, and it is one of the very important structure. Okay, alveoli is one of the very important structure that is specially meant for the exchange of gases. That region is meant for the exchange of gases. Okay, so here in our respiratory system, which is mainly divided into conducting zone as well as the respiratory zone or exchange zone. Conducting zone or the respiratory or exchange zone. So here even these ring-like structures even found in the bronchioles. So what is conducting zone? From nasal opening, nostrils till the bronchioles. Okay, till the bronchioles, and that is known to be the conducting zone, where the respiratory bronchiole as well as the alveoli, all those structures are refers to the respiratory zone. So there is a presence of conducting zone as well as the respiratory zone. Okay, so that is regarding to this. Next, when we look into the lungs, where it is mainly consisting of, on the front side there is a bone, and that is known to be the chest bone known as a sternum. Okay, front side there is a chest bone, sternum. On the lateral side it is surrounded by ribs. Okay, so the lateral side it is mainly consisting of ribs, bones of ribs. Okay, here also there are 12 pairs of ribs. So, and the lower side there is a presence of diaphragm. Lower side there is a presence of diaphragm. And on the dorsal side there is a vertebral column. Ventral side there is a sternum. Lateral side there is a presence of ribs, you can see here, and on the lower side there is a diaphragm. All these are very important in the process of respiration, in the process of breathing. Ultimately there will be change in all these structures also. Okay, so that is regarding to this. Now, in between the lungs, there is a space for heart. Okay, in between the lungs, there is a space for heart, and that is known to be the mediastinum. Mediastinum is a space for heart. It is especially in between the lungs. Okay, so this is regarding to the structure of respiratory system. So in the structure of human respiratory system, it starts from the nasal openings and the nostrils. There is a presence of pair of nasal openings or the nostrils. So from there is a presence of epiglottis, which is a cartilaginous flap, avoids the entry of food into the trachea, and then comes the sound box, nothing but the larynx, and then there is a tube-like structure is a trachea, which is mainly consisting of cartilage, C-shaped cartilage, ring-like structures, and it will be divided at the position of fifth thoracic vertebrae into left and right bronchus, and then we have pair of lungs, where in the lungs it consists of bronchus, bronchioles as well as the alveoli. Okay, where these bronchus are further divided to form bronchioles, primary, secondary, tertiary, terminal respiratory bronchioles, and then there is a presence of a blind sac-like, bag-like structure, and that is known to be the alveoli, where there is a major exchange of gases takes place. Okay, and then regarding to these lungs, which are covered by a membrane known as a pleural membrane. It is called a pleural membrane, consisting of a fluid called pleural fluid, which mainly avoids the friction. Okay, so on the lateral side of the lungs there is a presence of ribs, on the ventral side there is a sternum, chest bone, on the dorsal side there are vertebral column, and lower side there is a presence of diaphragm. Okay, so this is regarding to the human respiratory system. So next we'll see about the steps involved in the process of respiration. Okay, so next we'll see the steps involved in a process of respiration. So the first foremost step is nothing but the breathing, or which is also known as a pulmonary ventilation. Breathing or pulmonary ventilation. Pulmonary, see, pulmonary respiration refers to respiration through lungs. Bronchial respiration, respiration through gills. Cutaneous respiration, respiration through skin. Okay, so here in case of pulmonary ventilation, what happens is oxygen is drawn in and the carbon dioxide is released out. Okay, breathing or pulmonary ventilation, where mainly oxygen is drawn in and carbon dioxide is released out, and that refers to the breathing or pulmonary ventilation. And next is about diffusion of gases across alveolar membrane. Diffusion of gases across alveolar membrane. What happens in the alveoli? As I told, one of the functional unit in our lungs is nothing but the alveoli. Okay, where alveoli is mainly consisting of, the wall of the alveoli is also made up of the blood vessels. So there is a presence of blood vessels in the wall of the alveoli, where the oxygen which we take and which we inhale, and that oxygen will enter into the alveoli, where in the alveoli where these particular blood vessels, especially here one of the very important aspect is nothing but hemoglobin. Hemoglobin, which is having a capacity to carry around 4 molecules of oxygen because of its iron content, where the oxygen will be bind with the iron content so that it can exchange. So here what happens is diffusion of gases. So the gases will be diffused across the alveolar membrane. So the membrane is consisting of a blood vessel, so that will be diffused. And the third step is the transport of gases by the blood. So where there is a transport of gases, as you know that in the blood, wherein heart is mainly involved in the circulation, we have oxygenated blood as well as the deoxygenated blood. So the oxygen which will be diffused towards this particular alveolar membrane, then from the lungs this blood will enter into the heart. So from heart, and that blood is nothing but the oxygenated blood. The blood with oxygen refers to be the oxygenated blood, and that will enter into the body tissues. Where in the body tissues, what happens? The carbon dioxide will bind with the blood because oxygen will be utilized. So this carbon dioxide will bind with the blood, and that will come back to the heart, and that is nothing but a deoxygenated blood. So this is the transport. So that is the transport of gases, where oxygen will be transported to the body tissues and that will be utilized, whereas the carbon dioxide, so here especially there is a oxygen and the carbon dioxide which will be transported. Okay, so that will be transported. There are various factors for these that we will see in detail again. Okay, so next, diffusion of oxygen and carbon dioxide between blood and tissues. First, diffusion to the blood. Oxygen will be diffused into the blood, especially in the alveolar membrane. So that oxygenated blood will enter into the heart. From heart, this oxygenated blood will go to the body tissues. That will enter into the body tissues. Whereas in the body tissues, what happens? This particular oxygenated blood, oxygen will be utilized by the tissues for the various processes. For example, if the food has to be absorbed, oxygen is required. ATP has to be utilized, oxygen is required. Muscle contraction, oxygen is required. For all the processes, very important is nothing but the oxygen. Next, what happens? There is a diffusion of carbon dioxide. Whereas in the case of body tissues, the carbon dioxide will be diffused with the blood. That is a deoxygenated blood, and that will come back to the heart. And the last one is utilization of oxygen by the cells for the catabolic reaction, as well as the resultant release of carbon dioxide. Oxygen will be utilized by the cells, that is a cellular uptake. Okay, oxygen will be utilized. So that is the cellular uptake, as well as the finally release of carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide will be released out. So these are the steps which are mainly involved in the process of respiration. So it mainly involves, so in detail we are going to study all these steps. For example, the mechanism of breathing. We will study the mechanism of breathing. We will study the structure of alveoli. We will study the exchange of gases, how the exchange of gases takes place. We will also study the transport of oxygen, transport of carbon dioxide, how the transport of oxygen as well as the carbon dioxide takes place. So all these steps we will study in the next session. Okay, so this is regarding to the steps involved in the process of respiration.